they will be able to see all the.
Okay, I think we're recording.
Okay.
Do you see that it's recording? Because I'm in screen share, I may not. Do you see at the upper
Yes,
left? Okay,
yes.
cool, great. Okay. Yeah, just to reiterate, I cannot stress enough how important the Moodle basics guides are. So back at Moodle, you're able to log in using either the login icon up here at the right hand side where it says you are not logged in, click login. You can also use the little login lock icon. You should all be familiar with this. You log into Moodle with your first name, not last name. You do not need the @purchase.edu and the same password that you use to access your Purchase College email. And so now I am in Moodle and I am looking at my Moodle main page. So I'm going to refer to Moodle main page many times, and this is what I mean. So it's the overall system landing page for all of Moodle. We're not inside a course yet. We're just looking at the highest level of the system. So when I'm in my main Moodle area, I pointed out this central area has these sort of links to important things. You'll notice you have an administration and navigation block. It may be that when you first log in, your stuff looks like this, where you have that block expanded and showing up on the left-hand side of your course page. A housekeeping note we'll do when you get it logged into in a specific course is just to dock the navigation and administration blocks. It makes things a little cleaner as far as looking at a course, and we'll go into that more specifically. You will likely see a student project category. You probably have past semester course categories. Many of you will have a sandboxes category, and the categorized course list, this is probably just really redundant for many of you, is the place where your courses are housed. So this gives you quick access to all courses that you are associated with on the system. So for the purposes of this session, I'm going to click on my new sandbox course. This is a fresh, untouched Moodle course space. And many of you should have this. If you don't, it will be a little weird for me to create them on the fly. So you can let me know, either send an email or let me know in the chat that you do not have a sandbox space, and I can get one created for you, and then you'll be able to do all of these things right after the session. Okay, so since I am in with teacher credential, are there any questions up to this point? Because I have the chat sort of minimized. Feel free to let me know. Okay. So because I'm in as a teacher, I have no, nothing going on in here, but what I do have is, all right, so here's where, I'm sorry, I'm gonna just do this because, so your course may look like this, not with admin bookmarks, but with navigation. Your course may look like this. You have this, listen to this page with using Read Speaker. So Read Speaker is a screen reader that we have on our entire Moodle system that allows someone who needs that kind of assistive technology to have the pages read to them. So sort of cloaking this entire discussion is the importance of accessibility and making sure that the content you're posting into Moodle is accessible. And we have a contact, a librarian, Rebecca Oling. She is someone you would want to reach out to if you have accessibility concerns. And that sort of upper menu area in Moodle I mentioned at the very beginning, we have an accessibility link, and that leads to information about accessibility and the tools in Moodle that promote accessibility or that try to enhance accessibility. So when you come into a fresh Moodle space, you will see these blocks. So the Read Speaker block, the navigation block, and the administration block. What I like to do in order to declutter the page a bit is to dock the navigation and administration blocks so that they don't take up this amount of space, because we don't really need access to them right now in this sort of fleshed out full way. So to dock a block in Moodle, if you hover over the little icons next to the block title, so over here on the right, dock navigation block with a little arrow pointing left. If I click that, it sends the navigation block off to what we call the Moodle Dock area. But as I hover over it, I'm able to expand it and look at all of the options therein, but without it taking up real estate on my page. So I'm going to do the same thing for the administration block, which is the more important of the two blocks in our course context. So I see to minimize it or hide the block, but I want to actually just dock it into my Moodle Dock. So now you can see I've cleaned up that view, and I can even do this for Read Speaker if I'd like to throw that off to the side. I don't need it access right now, but now you see we have one column where the course content will be featured. So the next step, okay, great, I have this course, but how do I interact with it? There's two ways of turning your editing on in Moodle to interact with your course. The first and easiest way is to go to the Turn Editing On button off to the upper right-hand side. So now, if I click Turn Editing On, that button turns to Turn Editing Off. Similarly, you can engage with turning editing on and off in your administration block. Under Course Administration, there is a Turn Editing On and Off. So this will change. If editing is on, this will read off. If it's off, it'll say on. Now, you see that there are things we can do in here. So all Moodle courses, when they're created, come standard with a course announcements forum. So this is a way for you to communicate with the entire class in this sort of one direction, one way communication. So here's where you would say, we're having a Zoom meeting, it'll be at this time, on this date, and that's a way to blast a message out to your students, not only in the course announcements block itself where students can refer back to it, but this will also allow you to send them an email to their purchase inbox.
Marie.
Yes.
I may be the only one having this problem, but I'm not seeing the page that you initially loaded change at all.
I'm not either.
Nothing has happened. So when you're talking about docking things.
Oh, geez. Okay, I might have been not sharing the right. Let me stop share for a second and share my entire desktop so that that doesn't happen.
I think you might need to actually kind of go back a ways because we weren't.
Sorry, guys. Anything. Okay, so you should see yourselves now. And now you should see, I'm going to go back a ways. So you now see my new sandbox space.
Yeah, but we didn't see it.
Okay, no problem.
We haven't seen any movement.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, I must have gotten
I think you might
too many windows open.
Unfortunately, yeah. Should have said something earlier, but
yeah, guys,
at first I thought it was just me, and then I thought
no.
Yeah.
That's my bad. I have, you know, too many windows open, which I'm sure all of you are no stranger to either.
All
right.
Side, I don't have access to the admin menu.
Okay, so you probably don't have a sandbox space. Is that true?
I believe I do have a sandbox space.
Yeah,
okay, so
I don't have an admin either, and I do have a sandbox.
Oh, never mind. I just found it.
Yeah, I'm like that's impossible. Okay, let me do this again. So, all right, everyone's cool with getting logged in. I rambled about, you know, our help resources. In the categorized course list is where your courses are housed. So if you don't have a sandbox space, you won't see anything I'm going to show yet, only because that just means I didn't have you on a list that was provided earlier. So I'm just going to jump to my new sandbox, which is going to look more or less like what you are going to see in your brand new sandbox. So right now my editing is turned off. And I have, and I'm going to even really show this. So what I'm doing now is just docking and undocking things. So you're seeing sort of the preview of the preview. So, and admin bookmarks is just a thing you won't see at all. That's a thing I have because I'm a system admin within our Moodle instance. So what you see now is sort of these two columns, this skinny left side and this main area on the right side that is organized by weeks. So, you know, Moodle courses come configured automatically with a course announcements forum, and they're organized in a weekly format as a way for you to, you know, populate each week with content relevant to that week. So the first thing I'm going to do, here's where I said the navigation block. This is taking up quite a bit of space, as well as my administration area on the left-hand side. We don't need to have these visible in this way. What I can do is I can sort of compress them and send them off to the Moodle Dock area, which is where you see my admin bookmarks. When I hover over that, it gives me the options that are in there. So if I want to dock my Moodle navigation, I can just simply hover over the, the corresponding little icon that reads Dock Navigation Block, and it looks like a little left-facing arrow. When I click on that, it's going to send my navigation off to the Moodle Dock area. So it nests it right below the admin bookmarks, which you won't have, but I do. Now I see my navigation. I'm able to hover over it to access any of those things that are within the navigation block. Similarly, I can do that for my administration area, which is much more important in the context of our courses. I can hover over Dock Administration Block, and that sends that off to the far left side. Again, the Moodle Dock area, this far left area. And when I hover over it, I'm able to expand the options that I have available to me in my administration block, including these course administration areas. And just for, streamlining the view of the page, I'm going to also dock my read speaker block to sort of give us this one column where we can have our stuff appear. So in order to interact with Moodle, right now, there's nothing I can do other than look at the page. In order to interact with Moodle, what I need to do is turn my editing on. You can turn your editing on one of two ways. You can either hover over Turn Editing On, the block on the right-hand side, or in your navigation area, in your administration area, you have a Turn Editing On link. The easiest way to turn editing on is just to hit this block up at the upper right-hand side, and now the page refreshes, and all these things happen. I get a note, drag and drop files onto the course to upload them. I have this Add a Block menu. I have this way of, when I hover over, I can do things, I can edit things, I can add activities and resources. I can even use these little, this move icon to drag things around to reposition them on the page. So this is how we interact with our course. So the first thing we recommend faculty and instructors do when you get a brand new fresh Moodle course, we would really appreciate if people added 2 particular blocks to the course. Those blocks being the activities block, which when I add this, you'll see what this does is it creates sort of a table of contents for you and your students in order to more easily navigate around the page. As you begin populating activities and resources into the course, and we'll talk about activities and resources in a second, they will be listed here. So all of the forums in the course, all of the quizzes, all of the URL resources, all of the documents, things will start to be parsed out here in a way where students can quickly jump to things. It just makes getting around the course a lot easier. The second block we recommend gets added to your course right away is the people block. And I think this becomes even more important when folks are trying to troubleshoot. So if one of your students contacts me or contacts a librarian asking for help or contacts CTS asking for help with something in the course, it helps us to know, are you actually enrolled in this course, to determine what are the issues. So when I click on people, I see I have a list of everyone enrolled in my course. Right now, that's nobody because this is a brand new sandbox space. But I would start to see my students listed here, what their email address is, what their role in the course is, and the last time they've accessed the course. So that helps us sort of determine, is this an enrollment issue or are you really not seeing something? Like what's going on? So just to reiterate, we recommend, again, these are just recommendations, but it really helps us help others if the activities block and the people block is added right away to your courses. Any questions to this point? Nope, we're good? Okay. Okay, so you may be asking, how let me just also talk about course announcements again, since no one saw that. Course announcements is the place not to have a discussion, not to look to engage with students, but you're just looking to get information to them right away. So the course announcements forum comes standard in every single Moodle course. It is just part of the core Moodle course design. So course announcements is just what it is. You add a new topic, and it looks just like an email form. You give it a subject, you give it a message. So that's the body of your message. You are able to attach a file to it if you need to. You're able to pin things at the top. So sort of this stacked information. If you have some very important thing that you want to appear always at the top when a student is viewing this forum, you can pin it. You can also send the forum post notification with no editing time delay. So I believe it's a 3-minute window. If I do not check this box and I submit and create a course announcement, that will get automatically emailed within a 5-minute window rather than being sent immediately if I check this off. And sometimes that just allows for like, oh, I got the date wrong. Let me go back and adjust it before it emails everyone to their purchase inbox. And then you just simply post a forum. So I'll just do testing announcement. And I'm not going to send it with a time delay, post a forum. So this is a way where you can, so yes, you have 5 minutes to edit this to make any changes because I didn't click the immediate send right away. So now students will see when you come to this space, if you're a student, you'll see there's one unread message and you can click on it and see what that message is. Okay, so now, like I said, this is not the place to have discussion. There are other discussion forum types that will be used for discussion, but the course announcements forum is just to communicate very, one directional communication. So you're just looking to blast information to your students, whether that's, a course meeting date change or something has come up. There's, anything you would send an email for, you would use course announcements for. Okay, so the next thing is how do I get something uploaded into the course? And so just to draw attention to the Moodle guide, the working with files section, there's many things you can do to get content into Moodle, and often the routes to do those things can be different but with the same end result. So we can upload files, we could link to library resources, and you can embed videos. So there's ways of bringing content into the course, but the ways to do that can be different. So if I click on upload files here, here's a reminder about accessibility. Not everything needs to be a PDF. I'll just say that. If you are using something that appears in our library subscription databases, what you wouldn't want to do is download that file from, say it's something in, some data, I don't know, something from JSTOR. You wouldn't want to download the file and then upload it into Moodle. You would want to be linking students to the file as it exists in JSTOR. And all of that stuff is sort of discussed here in the linking section, linking to library resources. I had included Kim Detterbeck on the email just so she knows this session was happening, but more information she could give you about doing these sort of things. But I just wanted to draw special attention to it because there's many reasons to link to things, not the least of which is accessibility, but also these things cost so much money. And if one person is downloading it to upload it into Moodle for dissemination to 100 people, it is a false sort of usage statistic. So you would want to make sure to send all of your students to our databases, thus sort of justifying why we spend so much money on these things and why they're so critically important to what we do and to supporting our programs. So that's linking, which we can do a demo of also. Probably the number one thing is, how do I get my syllabus into here? Or how do I upload a reading? I have a PDF. It is something that is scanned. It is something that is accessible, but it's a book chapter that I can't get anywhere else, and I need to bring that into Moodle. To do that, in any of these areas, so this where course announcements appears, we refer to this as week 0. It is the overarching area of the course. It is not specific to any particular week. So given the nature of a syllabus, it is overarching to the course. It applies to every subsequent week. I'm going to click on add an activity or resource, and what that will open is what is called the activity chooser. The activity chooser is where we're going to be able to create different activities. And if you scroll down in this sort of vertical thing, resources, bringing those elements into the course. So I have a file, say it's my PDF. Here I'm going to select file under the list of resources. Moodle will give you a rundown of what all of these things mean on the right-hand side. And I'm just going to click add, and I might need to shrink my screen down a little bit for you to see all of this. So just like with the course announcements forum, Moodle's always going to ask you, okay, what's the name of the thing we're bringing in? What's the description of it? And then what is it? So I'm going to call this my syllabus. Sort of self-explanatory, but we'll say fall 2020. And you could be as verbose. Moodle's very into wrapping things in context. The more you give to the students, sort of the better. You have the option of displaying the description you put in the description field for any new file you're uploading. That can be displayed on the course front page. So I'll tick that off just to show you what that's like. Here is where we're going to select the file that we're going to bring into the course. You can do this one of two ways. If you click on this add file icon, this opens Moodle's file picker, where you see this sort of familiar browse and upload option. So I can browse for my file. It's going to bring me into this area where I can choose the document. So I'm going to take, the online teaching guide. Let's say this is my syllabus. So now you see it's queued up a file. It puts in some licensing information, which you don't really have to worry about. Upload this file. You see this is now staged here in the selected file. So this is the file I'm choosing to bring into the course. In appearance, we have all of the settings for file resources to force download. So on the student end, when they go to click on this, they'll be prompted to download the file rather than just open it. And we did this because we were running into older generations of iPads and tablets were unable to open the file because it wasn't being asked to be downloaded. So this is sort of why we did that. So I'm going to leave everything else at its default setting. I'm not expanding any of these other settings, and I'm going to click on save and return to the course. So now we see I have a brand new resource. It's a file resource. I see this little Adobe sort of icon to the left of it. You'll also notice an icon to open the document with Read Speaker. This is sort of our integrated accessibility things. The description of that file appears directly below it. And, say that was something meaningful, the student would see that sort of right away. If I needed to make an adjustment to this, as you hover over any activity or resource or element in your course, it gives you this gray shaded area. And off to the right-hand side, I have now all of these editing options. So I can go back into the edit settings, which will bring us right to the screen we were looking at before. I can create sort of like visual hierarchy by moving things to the right to create an indentation. So if I have several resources that belong under a particular heading, I can start to build that out and create that kind of visual cue. I can hide anything here, so I can hide the syllabus. And if I click hide, this is an immediate real-time change. So you see this is hidden from students. So if a student were to come to your page, this is a hidden resource, they would not see it. We see it as a grayed out resource, indicating that we can see it we're in as a teacher, but the students can't. And just like I hid it, I'm able to show, and I can immediately make that item available. Duplicate is more for if we want to duplicate, like say an assignment type or something, you have multiple forums that you want to just duplicate to create, multiple sort of at the same time that you can tweak along the way. And similarly, we can delete it. So I'm going to delete this just to show you what happens. Moodle will always check with you. Are you sure you really want to delete this? We get sometimes frantic emails from faculty. I deleted something, like, how can I get it? And unfortunately, that's not always possible, though Moodle does seem to have a recycle bin now, which is good. But so are you sure you want to delete this file, syllabus? Yes, I want to delete that. And just like that, it's gone. The second way to bring content into your Moodle course is with your editing turned on. I can go down to my file picker. I'm on a Mac, so I can go to my file picker, look at my desktop, and I want to go back to that online teaching checklist. And now I can select from my Finder. I don't have to come into Moodle and turn, I don't have to go in, add an activity or a resource. I don't even have to do that. I can drag and drop this document, this PDF, onto my course, and you see it uploads it. And now I have this title here, and say it was one of these long JSTOR titles or something, or you wanted to rename it. This little pencil icon located next to the file's name, I can change this. Oops. And hit enter, and now it'll rename the file for me. Likewise, I have all of the, edit settings. Say I took in the wrong file. Brings us right back to that updating file, which did read before, upload a new file. And here's where I can change the file. I can delete it. I could download it if I needed another copy of it, and so on. So if I wanted to delete that, I would just delete it. Or if I made any changes I needed to fix, here's a new description. I want to display it on the page. I'm leaving all of those other settings at their default. And now we have an updated PDF file resource. When you are viewing the course as an instructor, you'll start to see these, was someone jumping in? No? Okay. You'll start to see these accessibility score little gauges. This is our ally tool analyzing and interpreting the level of accessibility of the documents you use in Moodle. From the student perspective, they'll be able to see alternative formats for the items you upload. So if I click on alternative formats, maybe I need to view this. I want to download an audio version because I'm going to be in a car for many hours and I need to have this read to me so that I can read my assignment. So Ally allows your students to be able to engage with your materials in a method that suits their particular learning style and needs. So back at the add an activity or resource area. So that's the file resource. And that's for any file like Word docs, PDFs. We just ask that you make sure you do your best to make sure that they're accessible to students with, who use assistive technology. And those who don't, having things accessible for everyone is a best practice. That sort of universal for design learning is a universal thing. If you do it once and it's kind of good for everyone, and it's easier for you in the long run. Additionally, you may consider creating your syllabus as a page resource. The page resource is a way for you to put a lot of text, or it could be really anything. You could have embedded videos here. You can have text. It can display all of the things it's saying here: embedded code, images, sound, video, web links. So it's creating a web page that is accessible through Moodle, but that won't appear on your Moodle course homepage. So it's a way of offsetting content. We love to see faculty using this for something like the syllabus, because this is one of the most accessible choices you could make because you're just using text. So here's my syllabus as a page resource, and I give it a description. I can display that description on the course page, so it's a syllabus. And then you get this additional content area. The content is where the page's content will appear. So here's where you list all your syllabus content. And it will be, very long. Keep going, here's my grading breakdown. Here's the schedule. So this is just to, show the length of a document. In appearance, this is set up to open, which just opens as a regular link. What I like to do, I mean, okay, we'll leave it at open. I won't even talk about that yet. So I'm just leaving, you know, all this like mumbo jumbo right now. I'm going to save and return to course. So now I have a few things. I have a PDF, and now I have a page resource. So when I click on this, you see now it's displaying a web page within the context of my Moodle course. So this at the top here, we call this the Moodle breadcrumb trail. So I can see I'm in my sandbox course, I'm up in the general area, that week 0, and I'm viewing this specific page resource. This is great because this becomes something that's very easy for, you know, the Moodle, for Read Speaker to use, for all these accessibility tools, because this is just text. It is not a, student doesn't need a special program or any additional, you know, we see a lot of people using Microsoft Word to post their syllabus. I don't even have Word on my computer. So if I'm somebody who, you know, is using a very scaled back, like, you know, like a Chromebook or something, and I don't have a way of installing separate software, using the page resource to convey text-heavy content, such as the syllabus, is a really good option. So now that we're inside this resource, we need to make a change to it, let's just say, but I don't have an editing button here. So how do I do that? What you're going to look for is in the administration area. Anytime you're looking at a page, the administration area turns into this context-sensitive place. So Moodle recognizes that I'm inside a page resource, so it calls it a page module. And so what do I want to do with this? And right here, I can go back to my edit settings, and I'll be brought right back to the to the page we just looked at to create it. Now it reads updating page, and I'm able to make changes and make additions or remove things. I bring special attention to this because using the page resource is what I think a better alternative to providing a syllabus, because it allows you a lot more flexibility than, say, composing your syllabus in Word or in Google Docs, exporting it to a PDF, posting it in Moodle, and then if you need to change something in week 3, you have to go to your Google Doc, make the change, or go to your Word doc, make the change, export the file again, re-upload it into Moodle, make sure you're displaying the right version. Whereas if you use the page resource, you have a syllabus in here. And this goes for other things. It doesn't have to just be the syllabus. This goes for, you know, anything where you need to like convey text that you're writing. That's not really an assignment, or it's not any of these other things. I say syllabus mostly because that's probably the most immediate use. So it allows you to make changes much more quickly than if you have to re-upload files over and over again, and that gets confusing with like version control and like which one is this, which one is that. So I really like the page resource for the syllabus. Let's look a little more at resources. So the big ones you're going to use are file, page, the URL resource. Again, that's a way for you, and Moodle will walk you through all of this. Adding a URL is super simple. You choose URL from this list. And the only caveat is if you're linking to library database resources, you would want to make sure that you use the directions here, because you'll need what's called the easy proxy prefix to make them accessible from off campus. But so if I have, you know, this could be anything. I'm just going to say, you know, I don't know. We'll call it Moodle Basics Guide because that's what I have open here. So Moodle Basics Guide, this could be a link to anything. I'm just using this as an example. I take the URL for those linking directions. Let's just pretend. So I give it a name. The name, anything you name in Moodle in the name field is the thing that the student will click on. So it's the text hyperlinked that they click on. External URL, I'm just going to paste that in. I can provide it, again, context and description here that I can display on the front page, but I won't. The thing I like to have here is if I'm sending students outside of Moodle, in appearance, the display option, I want that URL to open up in a pop-up window, because unlike opening up a page resource, which is something that is inside Moodle, I don't want them to be taken away from Moodle navigation. So the pop-up is the default for adding a new URL resource. So adding a new external link to a course will automatically open up in a pop-up. Like I say, the student won't lose navigation in Moodle, and we'll see that in a second. We'll keep all these other options at their default because they don't need to be changed. So here I have a URL resource. A URL resource, I could rename it, I can edit it, I can make changes, and if I click on it, it's going to open my Moodle guide in a brand new page. And this is where I said this will open up on top of your Moodle course. So right here, I'm able to navigate back to Moodle, but if I toggle my window back, I still have it. What I like is that students are never taken away from Moodle, so they maintain their navigation within the Moodle environment. And especially since we're remote and the delivery through Moodle is so important, I think making things as easy and as least frustrating as possible from the student perspective is really important and valuable. So that is a URL resource. I guess I should stop and ask if there's any questions anywhere. No? Okay.
I'm sorry, Marie?
Yes, yes. Hi. Hi.
How do we, if we upload a video, how would that work? Does it need to be,
Okay.
does the video need, can we upload videos from YouTube, or is there a restriction on those?
Nope, great. Thanks for asking. So at the Moodle guide, there's a section in the working with files area about embedding videos into your Moodle course. So what we didn't talk about yet is the label resource. So you can embed a video in a page resource. You can also embed a video. So if you embed a video in a page resource, it is something the student needs to click on to then view. Moodle has something called a label resource. So in the add an activity or resource menu, scroll down under resources, there's something called a label. So what's a label? A label is a way for you to provide a snippet of something. So it could be text, it could be an image, it could be a video. It's a way to provide that content piece on the main page of your Moodle course, unlike where you're using a page resource, which is offsetting that content onto a separate page. So the label resource, I'm going to click add here. It's going to set up a form that sort of looks somewhat familiar, but there's many, many less options now, far fewer things going on. So I want to add a video, I want to embed a video resource into my course. So I'm going to go to YouTube, and I'm going to take a URL from YouTube, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste it. Moodle has a filter installed that will take that URL and interpret it as a YouTube URL and automatically convert a player for us. So, all right, I'm going to choose, let's take this COVID safety guide. And I'm going to take, instead of the share URL, I believe the share URL works, but I'm going to take the URL as it appears in the address bar of my browser. And what I'm going to do is come back to Moodle, and I've copied it. So I, Command C or, Control copy, whatever the analogous Windows command is. I don't even remember anymore. I'm going to Command C, or I'm going to, right click and, save that, take this entire URL. Back at Moodle, I'm going to just Command V, pasting that into the rich text editor here. Right now, and if you're using Chrome, your browser will automatically interpret this as an active live URL, and it will automatically make it a hyperlink. But since I'm in Firefox, I'm going to need to activate this link. So to do that, I click on, so I first paste it in, highlight the entire URL. I'm going to click on the Insert Edit Link icon in the rich text editor. And what is the link URL? I'm going to repaste that and insert. Now you can see it's changed from static black text to a active blue link. And that's all Moodle needs. If you're using Chrome, this should be automatic. I don't even have Chrome on this machine, but I believe that it works automatically in Chrome. But here I needed to highlight the whole thing, come into Insert Edit Web Link, paste it in again a second time, click Update. It's an active blue link. I'm not going to mess with any of my settings here. I'm going to save and return to the course. And because I've used a label resource, I now have an embedded video inside that label resource that displays on my Moodle front page. Similarly, so that's how one way of embedding videos. If you had multiple videos, you wanted to say they were all on a common topic, or you wanted to you know, wrap some context around some of the videos, you wanted students thinking about particular things as they viewed each video, you could do that one by one in a label resource. However, the more external content you have Moodle bringing in from other sources, it becomes more difficult for the page to load. And several semesters ago, we had a faculty member who shall remain nameless upload so many, or not upload, embed so many videos and so many MP3 files that it crashed our entire Moodle instance until we figured out, oh my goodness, look at this page. The page couldn't load, students couldn't, and you know, I was having trouble from on campus using all the networking resources we have available on campus. Imagine a student with, you know, really low bandwidth who's trying to take these fully remote courses and they're not able to access the material because of there's just, the page is just jammed with so much being drawn from other sources. A way to get around that is by using the page resource. So if I come in and edit this existing page resource by going to my edit settings in the administration area, I can come back into the content, page content area and start putting in URLs by using that same process by making them a hyperlink. And I'll just throw it in here twice just to show you what I mean as far as creating more content. I can use the URL, the page resource rather, to, here's the one in the label. And then here is the page resource, what's going to open up inside my Moodle course, but separately. So now here, it's much easier for, you know, a Moodle course to load if things are not all shoved onto that front main page. This may not be an issue for you guys, but I just say it as a word of caution. It also helps reduce this endless scrolling you may encounter in some Moodle courses, where sometimes faculty will paste their entire syllabus in the section summary of the course, and you know the student has to scroll so far down just to start getting to some content. So that becomes another thing, and anything we can do to sort of streamline and make these courses nice and tidy and very navigable is in the best interest of everyone, and you know, most importantly, the students. So as I've started populating a handful of resources in here, you'll notice the activities block has created a resources line. So if I click on resources, now it just gives me sort of the table of contents for resources. So where are they? So these two I can see are in the week 0. This resource appears in the August 31st week, and so on. So as you start building out these course spaces, the activities block will represent things that you're putting on the main page. This is why I say it's important to add that activities block to the course, just because it's going to make getting around so much easier. Okay, so hopefully that answered the embed question about embedding videos. As I said, there is a help page. Yeah, no worries. There is a help page at our site. I mean, it's a lot to listen to me, so I've tried to really carefully write out all the directions in a very step-by-step way, so you can refer back to this at any time. So hopefully that's clear. Let's see what else. Okay, so maybe let's talk about, so we've talked a bunch about resources. I'm just going to scroll to a fresh area, and I'm going to click on the add an activity or resource area, but instead of focusing on resources, which we've done a bit, I'm going to talk about activities for a minute. So some of the activities you'll be setting up, I'm sure, since you're going to be instructors on discussion sections, the forum, the discussion forum activity will become very important. So here's a way for you to provide a venue for your students to talk to not only you, but also to each other and to engage with the material. So I'm going to click on the forum option in my list of activities and click add. So everything with Moodle is add this, and then you're going to lay out and define what that is to the system. So the forum name, and we can call this anything like week 1 discussion. In the description is where you're going to want to put your prompt. So let's discuss the material from week 1. And here's where you're going to really like give students what are they expected to do? What questions are they expected to answer? What things are they expected to be thinking about right now? And it's always a nice idea to display the description on the course page, although you do not have to. Here's where some of the settings for this assignment for this forum become more important. Moodle has 5 different forum activity types. And you may notice the little question mark that is next to almost everything we see in Moodle. If you click on that, this is going to bring up this, again, another context-sensitive dialog box that's going to have a rundown of what these 4 forum types are, what these 5 forum types are all about. So we have a single simple discussion, which is for a very focused on one topic discussion. The Q&A forum, which if you're looking to have something, a little bit higher stakes discussion, the Q&A forum is a nice choice because it basically requires students to address the forum, to make a forum post before they can see their peers' forum posts. Standard forum in a blog-like format, or the standard for general use. It's come up a bunch of times. It's probably a good idea, especially for these remotely instructed courses, to create a forum, a standard forum for general use. I've heard faculty say they're creating sort of like a student lounge place, somewhere that is about, anything. Students can just talk with each other, which is not what we're setting up here. This would be a more focused, week 1 discussion. You could still use standard forum for general use, which will allow students to create threads. So that it's worth looking into the different forum types to make decisions about how you want students to use these things. And at our help guide, again, there is an option for course activities. And there is a section here about discussion forums where we talk a little bit more in depth about what students can and can't do in the different forum types. So I'm going to leave this as a standard forum for general use. You have the option of, students can add an attachment. They can, you probably don't want them to add an attachment. It came up last week. A faculty member was very interested in having the word count be tracked, so that students were expected to only, that she was looking for like a 200-word response, and that really mattered as a creative writing course. So she really wanted to make sure that that display word count was turned on. You don't have to do that. There's options for subscription tracking, so that students will be notified when a new post is made or someone replies to their post. You also have options for having this be a graded activity, which I'll let Keith handle. Graded activities a little bit later in a couple minutes. There's ratings and all these other things. I'm going to ignore all that stuff. I'm not making any changes. I just wanted to let you know there are a lot of changes. Moodle's a very robust system. You can do a lot of things. There's almost sometimes too many choices. So I'm just going to keep this nice and simple. And I'm going to scroll down, and as we did before, we're going to save and return to the course. So now a little bit ways down the page, I have a brand new week 1 discussion forum, and it's going to look just like the previous discussion forum the previous forum we looked at, which was the course announcements, which was not for discussion, but now we have a new place for students, and anyone can add a new topic, unlike the course announcements, which only you as a teacher can add a new topic because it's not the place to converse. So if I add a new discussion forum topic, it's the same form. It's just now students can do this. Okay. And if we go and look at the forums in the activities block, we're now going to see 2 forums. And here's my description of it. And am I subscribed to it? So everyone will sort of see that. Okay, so that's forums, which will probably be very important. And again, everything gives me these edit options. I can go right back in and make changes if I do need to. Another important, excuse me, activity type is an assignment. Actually, before we even do assignments, I'm assuming, well, actually, I don't know how folks are going to be taking attendance. Is attendance something I should cover right now because it is this different way of meeting? I'm not sure how that will be tracked, but
I had a hard time with attendance. It's something I'd be really interested in.
Okay, cool. I can go through and do an overview. All right. So activities, add an activity or resource. I'm going to choose attendance. I'm going to click add. What this does, I don't need to do anything here except leave this and just create this. Attendance, I'm not changing anything. I'm not messing around with any of these settings. Save and return to course. All I'm doing is initiating an attendance activity in my course. I don't like where I've put it, so I can drag and drop this up into the week 0 area because it's something that is overarching to the entire course. I'm going to position it right there. So now what I need to do, I have the instance of attendance created, but I need to configure it to reflect the course meetings or sessions for this particular course. So I wish I could put an extra S here because I don't want to just add one session. I want to add multiple sessions. And these directions are in the participants tab of the Moodle guide under attendance activity setup, just so you know it's all here. So I'm going to, the very first thing, add sessions. I want to add multiple sessions, so that's an important distinction to make. So let's just use the real August 31st, that's when we're starting. You can put the times in, and you know, this is military time, so we're going to say it's 12:30 to, you know, 1:50. Let's just pretend, not even sure where the grid's at these days. So that is our first meeting date and time. You can also create a calendar event for that session, so that will show up in the Moodle calendar, which we can add to the course. The real key part of this is you want to create multiple sessions. So you need to expand multiple sessions, and what I want to do is repeat the session meetings above at the following intervals. So I want to repeat this on, let's say we're a Monday, Thursday course. This may not be real, but we're just going to pretend. I want to repeat them until when? So I'm going to look out to December 21st. Let's just say that's the end of the semester, which I think it is. So really, really important, click on multiple sessions. That is the key component to creating more than one attendance session. So when I create multiple sessions, I'm going to tick off Monday, Thursday. I'm repeating that until the December 21, and then I click add. And what this will do is now I have created a meeting session for each of my class meetings. In each of the class meetings, you have a green button that allows you to take attendance. So say the first meeting happens, and I have no students in here, which is so sad, but your students would be listed here in a great big list with this present, late, excused, and absent preloaded default settings for the students' attendance. So I can check off who was here, who wasn't, who came late, who is excused, and so on. There are ways you can redo this and change the point values for them, but this was, I just want to sort of show you how we got to attendance. So now at your main page, you still have this attendance. You can still click on this. Because I didn't make any changes to this attendance because I haven't got any students enrolled. If I did make a change, you would see this turned from a green circle to a green arrow, indicating that some attendance was logged. But so you have this attendance area for every single class meeting throughout the rest of the semester. Okay, so.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
Is attendance something that is visible to everyone or just?
Okay, so yeah, each student will see their own attendance. You can also add an attendance block here. Once you have the activity configured, like we just did in the setup, you can add an attendance block that then the student will see their attendance. You will see take attendance, add an attendance, how do I get to attendance? The student will then see in their own block their own attendance, and they will also see that when they click attendance. So no one else will see they won't see the big list you'll see, and they won't see any other information other than their own. Same goes for the gradebook, and it's funny we transitioned to this because Keith has joined the call. The same thing goes for the gradebook. One of the questions I answer most is the gradebook is not visible by any other student other than that student. So it may, seem strange, like your faculty are seeing so much and I see every student. They will never see someone's grades that they shouldn't see. And so with that, if there's any other questions about the stuff before, we can start talking about the gradebook if you guys are ready. Is there any other Moodle basics or adding documents or setting up a resource, embedding a video?
I just had one question, Marie.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
In the forum that you were talking about, now that's strictly a written forum. There's no live forum. In other words, it's strictly a written forum.
Of discussion forum?
Yes.
Yeah, it will be a text-based forum. Okay. There's other things there's other tools that are integrated into Moodle that can give you that more more interactive experience you're kind of getting at. And right. That's VoiceThread is one of them that can allow you to have a conversation around something in different modalities.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Keith.
Hey, how's everybody?
All right. So if you want to take it away I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can share it if you want to start talking about Gradebook.
Okay, so let me just check with everyone. What experience do you have using Gradebook at all in Moodle, or should we just and to what extent are you all setting up the gradebook or just recording information in the gradebook?
Keith, hi, this is Elizabeth Guffey. I think we're going to have a variety of levels of users here. Some people are brand new and not probably going to be doing a Moodle class until the first time next semester. And then we've got other people who have already been teaching for a while and looking for more augmented understanding of what's going on.
So why don't I do, I'll do a kind of a general discussion of how most faculty approach setting up their grade books, and we'll go through what would be maybe a fairly standard kind of scenario that would cover much of the issues that you would want to address setting up a grade book, and then we'll look at some of the different ways you can view the grade book for either entering data or getting reports. Also, given Marie's point, there is a way that you can look at the grade book from the perspective of an individual student. So you would be able to see exactly what each of your students would see. So just a couple of general comments beforehand. I mean, there are some really good pedagogical reasons for using the gradebook. It's just another good way to provide feedback to your students when they can see on an ongoing basis a summary of the feedback and grades that they've gotten in the class, right? And so, yeah, the more we can get comfortable with students going to their Moodle gradebooks to see how they're doing in the class, the less emails we get about how am I doing in the class kind of thing. And hopefully, if students are seeing their grades accumulate in the gradebook for their Moodle course as the semester goes on, we have fewer surprises toward the end of the semester on the part of the students as to how they're doing. So with that, let me, I've been running from meeting to meeting, so I haven't actually prepped ahead of time. So let me just go into a Moodle space that I know has not been used for any kind of workshop in the past. Oh, except this is going to already have a bunch of stuff in the gradebook from the import of those course materials. Doubt I've got anything in the gradebook here. So when you're in your class, no, this isn't going to work either. Yeah, okay. Give me just a minute here. I'm going to go set up a brand new sandbox. Why not?
You could search for the one I was just using, Keith. It's just called New Sandbox. And
Okay.
it's pretty empty. There's no activities yet. Aside from some forums. Yeah.
Okay. So if we are in a course and you go to your course administration block, one of the links is to take you straight into the gradebook for your setup. Now, if you look under navigation in the area where the course you are looking at is listed, there's also a link to grades. This is to, and this is where students would go to see a link to their grades under the navigation block under their navigation block for the course. They would have a link to grades, assuming that you are displaying the gradebook. And, but I would recommend you start with the gradebook setup. And actually, what I just said reminds me, let me just go into course settings for your course. And it's kind of strange maybe that it's under appearance, but one of the options under appearance is whether or not to show the gradebook to students. And for the courses that are being produced these semesters, that is defaulting to yes. So you don't have to do anything to turn the gradebook on. If for some reason you don't want to use the Moodle gradebook and you don't want students to get confused by going to a gradebook that's in their Moodle course that's really not being used, you do have the option of turning that off. And again, this is under course settings, under appearance, but I'll just leave this on. And so if I go to Gradebook Setup, Marie, have you put any students into this space?
I haven't. Let me do that real quick.
Okay, why don't you just put in all the sample students? And then we can go back and review what the attendance would look like with actual students as well. So if you go to Gradebook Setup, you know, actually, let me go back to the attendance activity here. One thing to mention with the attendance activity is that by default, when you add it, Moodle is going to add it as a graded activity, which can be useful, but when I'm working with faculty, I find that most of them want a way to track attendance, but they don't want necessarily Moodle to take just the percentage of times that students showed up and turn that directly into some percentage point score. Faculty oftentimes will have a course policy where I'm going to be tracking attendance, and if you miss 3 sessions, your grade is lowered by a letter grade, and if you miss 6, you automatically fail the course, things like that. That kind of meta-analysis of attendance for grades is not what Moodle attendance activity would do. This is by default added as a 100-point graded activity, and so if students are there 3/4 of the time, they get a 75 out of 100, which, if that's the way you want to score your attendance, you can do that, but oftentimes I recommend to faculty, when they're setting up the attendance, if they want to use the attendance data to evaluate how that should impact students' grades, turn off the, set the grading type to none. And if I save and return to course, now when I go into the Gradebook Setup, that attendance activity is gone because Moodle's not treating the activity itself as a graded activity. So I wanted to do that because I wanted to show you what an empty gradebook looks like. We have essentially a big bucket or a big container that you can put things into, and as you do that, you can tell Moodle how to tally up the scores that you're attaching to various items. And then Moodle will take your directions for how those scores are tallied up, and we'll use it to convert the total course score for the student, which is what's represented by this empty bucket here. We have the course, you'll see your course title at the top of this container, and you'll see course total down here, as well as some information that Moodle by default is using this simple weighted mean of grades to tally things up. Okay, so the things we need to talk about are how to organize things into your gradebook, how to control how Moodle is tallying up the different items, and what does simple weighted mean of grades and these other aggregation factor approaches mean anyway. So I'm going to go back out actually to the front of the course, and I'm going to add a label. I wouldn't recommend that you do this. This is just for our workshop purposes. And what I'm going to do is to put on as a label on the front page of Moodle here a grading schema for our fake course here. So this grading schema is what you might generally put into the syllabus. So there are going to be some quizzes over the course of the semester, and altogether those are going to make up 20% of the grade. And maybe we're going to have a midterm that is 20%, and a final that is 25%. So that makes 65%. Maybe we're going to do a paper that's 20%. So now we're getting up to 85%. Assignments, reading readiness assignments and so forth, maybe those are 10%, and participation 5%. So when I am working with faculty, I always ask them, well, how have you described grading in the syllabus? What's the grading schema? And this may not reflect the kind of grading schema that you plan to use for your courses, but it will give us some opportunities to look at how to handle putting in a grade item, putting in some grade categories, different ways of treating items in categories and so forth for the purposes of the workshop here. So if we look at these, you maybe can get an idea of which of these items, which of these parts of the grade are individual items, like the midterm, like the final, and which are groups of items. So I'm not telling the students at this point how many quizzes we're going to have. We're going to have as many quizzes over the course of the semester as I think we need to have. Maybe we'll have 8 quizzes, maybe we'll have 15 quizzes, maybe we'll have some small quizzes, maybe we'll have some large quizzes, we'll have some quizzes that are announced ahead of time. We'll have some times in class when I'm just going to decide, well, and you're all probably going to be teaching remotely, so it's going to be a whole different situation as well, that, okay, we need to have a quiz, or I don't know how many assignments we're going to have, but all the quizzes together are going to be 20% of the grade, and all the assignments together are going to be 10% of the grade. So I want to show you how you can set these up as grade categories in Moodle, so that you as an instructor have more flexibility. You know, I've worked with faculty who say, no, I have to have 5 quizzes and each one of them has to be 8 points because I need the quizzes to add up to 40 points because that 40 points fits in a particular proportion of my overall grading schema. By using categories and different aggregation methods, you can free yourself from that kind of constraint. So I'm going to keep this tab open and I'm going to open up Gradebook Setup in a second tab so I can just easily go back and forth. And got all these Zoom control windows in the way, so let me organize my Chrome window a little bit better here. Okay, so first thing I want to deal with is I want to be able to set up the gradebook so that I can have a place to put quiz scores and to tell Moodle that those collection of quiz scores make up 20% of the grade. So I'm going to go into the grades setup and I am going to add a category because I'm going to have more than one quiz. So I'm going to add this quizzes category. And click Save Changes. And now I just want to point out to you the different buckets that we're talking about. So your overall course grade is still this large container that has everything else inside it. But now you've put a smaller bucket inside the large course container. And so obviously as you add quiz items to the gradebook, you want to make sure that all of those items show up here in this quizzes container within the larger course container. Okay, so I've added the container. I haven't yet told you how to make this 20%, but let me just go back. I usually think it's a good idea to get all the big things in, the top level items in first. So I'm going to add a midterm, and that I'm going to add as a grade item. And I'm just going to say midterm. And for now, I'm just going to leave its maximum grade as 100. We'll come back to this in a bit. And so now I have in my course total a container for quizzes and an item for the midterm. And let me just quickly go through and add the rest. I'm going to add an item for the final, an item for the paper. I'm going to add another bucket for assignments, and then we'll talk about participation in a minute. So we need an item for final exam. And we need, for now, I'm just going to add it as an item for the paper. And click Save Changes. And I'm going to add another container, another category for assignments. And then now I have to decide, what am I going to do for participation? You know, I could regularly have little things that the students are doing across the semester, you know, little 1, 2, 3 point item activities that I want them to do, and I can score all of those. And then for participation, I just want Moodle to be able to tally up all of those items. If I were going to do that, I would obviously add that as a category and then just put each of those little items in that category. Another way to handle participation is for you to just, you know, keep mental or paper records of who's there and participating and who's not. And at the end of the semester, you know, assign participation points based on how well the students have done. Now, that doesn't provide students any feedback on their level of participation throughout the course. So if you do that, you might want to, at midterm time, say, you know, you really could step up your participation or not. But for simplicity, I'm going to add it as a grade item. And for now, I'm also going to leave it at 100 points, 100 points. And I'm going to click Save Changes. And now I have all of the top ticket items that I've defined in my syllabus added to the gradebook as either categories or items. So let me just pause here for a minute and ask, are there any questions about adding items or categories, or when you might want to use one or the other? Okay, I'll take the silence as I'm probably going too slow. So now that you've got these top level items in here, you want to let Moodle know that, well, quizzes should be 20% and the midterm should be 20% and the final exam should be 25% and so forth. The assignments 10%, participation 5%. I will tell you that by default, your overall course grade is going to be calculated as simple weighted mean of grades. And what that means is that Moodle is going to look at the point value for each of the items involved and use those point values as the weights. And so you can see that, you know, when I added these things, it all just came in with 100 points as the kind of default score, either for the items or for the category. So I currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 items. They all have the same 100 point value. And so if this means they're all getting the same weight, which means each one of them is contributing 1/6 or 16.7% of the total grade, which is not what you want. You want quizzes to be 20, you want the final exam to be 25. So clearly you need to get away from simple weighted medium grades here. So what you need to do is, if you look at your overall course grade container, which is this big one on the outside, and come over here to edit the settings for that overall course grade, you can see the different options you have that different ways you can tell Moodle to tally up the different scores. So the default, whenever you add the default on your course category, on your total course grade, or on any category you add into the gradebook, is to use a simple weighted mean of grades. And the reason why this is the default is that although it's not exactly equal to just adding up the points, this is algebraically essentially equivalent to adding up the points. So this would add up those 6 100-point items to basically have a total possible of 600 points, and then your students would get, what percentage out of that. So just think simple weighted mean of grades. If I want to add things up, this is I leave that as the default. But clearly for these top level items, we want to set the mean, the weights of each of those items. And so almost invariably when I'm working with faculty, unless they do have kind of a simple, I've got these items and I'm adding up the points kind of approach to grading, we generally speaking will switch the aggregation method over to weighted mean of grades. And when I save those changes, then a new column shows up for all of these top level items where you can set the weight. And here the easiest thing to do is just to put in the, this quizzes were 20%, so just put in a 20. The midterm was 20%, so I'll put in a 20 there. Put in a 25, put in a 20, put in a 10, and put in a 5. And very important here, you have to click Save Changes for those changes that you've made. And so now, here we've got this bucket for quizzes inside the calculation for the total course grade, and that everything that is in here is going to be tallied up in a way that contributes to 20% of the overall grade for the course. And as I mentioned, when I added these categories, I didn't make any changes, so these also are set up with this simple weighted mean of grades. Okay. So it's actually fairly easy for you to have Moodle handle weighted grades. You just specify what the setup is in the gradebook, put in the scores for the different items, and then Moodle will do all the calculations to come up with the total score for each of the students. Okay. Any questions there? Okay, so let me show you some refine. I mean, this is kind of the basis, and so when you add quizzes, you can determine the point values and weights for those quizzes. If you're going to use weights, or how you're going to have Moodle tally those up, we'll talk about that in a minute. One thing I might say at this point, though, is that maybe you're having students turn in the paper as a Turnitin assignment. And so you really don't need to have set up this separate grade item in the gradebook for the paper. So I'm going to go back out to the front page of Moodle, and I'm going to come down here to the last week of class, and I'm going to add a Turnitin assignment number 2. And I'm going to call it term paper, because I'm not very imaginative at this point. Yeah, turn in your final paper here. And going to make, for purposes of our workshop here, I'm not going to bother with any of these settings here. I'm just going to actually just create the Turnitin activity. You might want to have the term paper turned in as a Turnitin activity because you want to be able to use the Grademark tools to provide feedback on the paper, or you want to use the originality checking feature to make sure that students are properly citing external sources and aren't wholesale copying materials. Okay. Well, if I now go in and refresh the page on the Gradebook Setup, you will now see that because I added a graded activity to the front page of Moodle, Moodle has put that graded activity in the gradebook. So really, I don't need this manually added grade item for the paper. I want the Turnitin paper to be worth 20% of the grade. So I'm going to delete the term paper grade item that I added. Because I am compulsively organized and I have the term paper listed below the final exam in the grading schema, I'm going to click on this move, and I'm going to move that Turnitin paper assignment that I added to the course to this slot just below the final exam. And what's the last thing we need to do? We need to make sure that Moodle scores the term paper as 20% of the grade. So if you're looking closely, you'll see that I left the score on the term paper, on the Turnitin term paper, to be total points out of 100. But even though I'm grading that on a 100-point scale, Moodle is making the students' scores out of 100 for the term paper be worth 20% of the grade. Just to kind of reinforce that, let's pretend that I'm doing a face-to-face class. I'm actually giving the midterm exam in class. I might have, 8 or 10 short answer questions, each of which might be 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 points. And maybe I have an essay question that's worth 15 points, and maybe I've got some multiple choice questions on the exam, and I'm scoring them each out of 100 as 1 point. My midterm exam might add up to 87 total points, or it might add up to 127 total points. And so I don't have to write my exam for it to come out as exactly 100 points. I can add whatever questions I want on the midterm, apply point values to them that make sense. If it's a longer short answer question, maybe I want to grade it out of 8 points, but if it's a shorter short answer question, I'm going to grade it out of 5 points. And so whatever your midterm points turn out to be, you can just go ahead and score the exam that way. And so let's say that, and as you were adding that item to the to your grade book, you would just specify what the maximum grade is. And so if I wrote an exam that had a maximum grade of 127, that would be no problem for Moodle. It's still going to give it a weight of 20. And so I'm going to click Save Changes. And we'll look to see how you would actually enter the points in a minute. Same thing with the final exam. If I'm adding quizzes, I might be doing quizzes in Moodle. So if I come up here, and we haven't probably added any questions to the question bank, but I can still go ahead and add quiz activities anyway. I'm going to add a quiz and call it quiz 1. And I'm not going to worry about when it opens, when it closes, any of those other things. I'm just going to add it. Quizzes and assignments and Turnitin assignments by default are all graded activities. So as you add them, they will be added to the gradebook. Now I did something that I really didn't want to do here when I set up this quiz, and I'll show you by setting up another quiz. Going to call this quiz number 2. And one thing I didn't pay attention to as I was setting this up is when you look at the grade on the quiz, you can specify if it needs to go into a category or not. And so this time I'll remember and pay attention, and I'll put in that I want this to show up in the quizzes category. And I'll go ahead and add maybe a third quiz here in this week. And again, I'll make sure that I get into the quizzes. So I might decide that I'm going to have 7 quizzes. I might decide I'm going to have 12. As the course goes along, I can add quizzes on the fly. As long as I am telling Moodle that they all need to go into that quizzes category, doesn't matter. Whatever the total number is, they will all be tallied up to be that 20%. And so let me refresh the screen here, and you'll see that because I remember to select that, quiz 2 and quiz 3 automatically got dumped into the quizzes bucket. Quiz 1 didn't, so I can either select over here and move the item to quizzes, or I could have clicked on the move icon to move things up and down. Now, by default, these all have 10 points, so it really doesn't matter what aggregation method we choose here, but I'm going to go back out to the front page, and maybe I'm going to add an assignment activity here. I want students to, read some materials for the course and upload a 1-page summary. And I'm going to make this one worth 8 points. And I'm going to make sure that I remember to put it in the assignments category. And I click save and return to course. And I'm just going to go through and pepper some assignments throughout the semester here. Maybe I want students to reflect on something midway through the course, and I'm going to make that to be a little bit more points. I'm going to make that to be 20 points. And again, I'm going to remember to put that into the assignments category. And, maybe I'll add another reading response paper down here. Come on. Oh, I hate it when I can't scroll when I'm sharing my screen on Zoom. There we go. And this one, I'm actually going to make 10 points. It's a little bit more substantial than the last reading response paper. And put it into the assignments. And I'm going to do one more. And the other thing I'm going to do before I return to the gradebook is I'm actually going to look at these quizzes. And you would normally go to the edit quiz page to actually add quiz questions. I'm not going to actually add questions because we don't have, Marie, we don't have any questions in this course, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but I'm just going to show you that also on this page where you edit the quiz to add questions, you also can determine what the maximum grade for the quiz is going to be. So I'm actually going to make one of these 8 points. And one of them, I'm going to make quiz number 3 be worth 12 points, just so we have some different point values for the 3 quizzes that show up in the gradebook, because I want to use them to make a point. So I'm going to go back into the gradebook setup, and I'm going to refresh the page. And so now we've got 3 out of however many quizzes that are going to be for the course into the quizzes category. We have 4 of the different reading or other assignments, and maybe there will be more by the time the semester ends, but they'll all be here in the assignments category. By default, these categories, as I said, were set up with simple weighted mean of grades, which means that Moodle is going to take the point values of the items inside the bucket for their weights. So in this case, quiz number 1 would have a weight of 8, quiz number 2 would have a weight of 10, and quiz number 3 would have a weight of 12. For the assignments, we've got weights of 8, 20, 10, and 12 by default, because again, this category is simple weighted mean of grades. So it's put up there. The way things are set up now, this mid-course reflection would count twice as much as this reading response, and not quite twice as much as reading number 3, and a little bit more than twice as much as reading response paper. So you have to decide, do the different point values for the items that I have in a bucket reflect their relative importance? And if the question is yes, then you can just leave this as simple weighted mean of grades, and Moodle will give this mid-course reflection more of a weight when tallying up the assignments category than these other items. Okay, so think, do I want to manually specify the weights like we did for the top level category here? Then you want to change that category, in this case the whole course grade, to weighted mean of grades. If the point values that I have assigned on the items reflect their relative importance, you can stick with the default weighted mean of grades. But maybe you have the situation where I've got these 3 quizzes and they're scored on different point values just for convenience. But as far as the class is concerned, a quiz is a quiz is a quiz. They should all be counted equally toward this quiz's category. You clearly will not want to use simple weighted median grades here, because in this case, quiz number 3 is going to be worth 50% more than quiz number 1. So again, you need to identify the container that you're wanting to change, in which case this is the quiz's container. Come over, select the edit option from it, go into edit settings. And we've talked about simple weighted median grades. That's kind of like adding things up. And weighted median grades lets you determine what the relative weight should be. If everything in a category should count the same, then you can set that to just simple mean of grades. Okay, so I mean, these 3 are probably what most faculty will use. And you can think of them as simple weighted mean of grades. I'm kind of adding things up, and the point values indicate their importance. Weighted mean of grades means I get to set what's important and what's not. And mean of grades means everything in the category counts the same. So here we have a pretty basic gradebook setup that shows the different aspects. You've got the ability to set up individual grade items or grade categories. You could actually have categories within categories. So maybe you allow students to do one of 3 different assignments for the mid-course reflection. So you could have a category in here that was mid-course reflection, and then set that category to choose the highest grade. Students don't have to do all 3 items that are in that subcategory. They do 1, but if they happen to do 2 of them, they get whatever the highest grade is. So, and again, that's one of the options. So you can set up items and categories. Activities on the front page of Moodle that are graded activities, like Turnitin assignments or Moodle assignments or quizzes or forums, for that matter. If you turn ratings on, Moodle will automatically put them in. You can manually add grade items. You can uncouple the maximum score you have for an item with its weight. And so this gives you flexibility, the freedom. You don't have to write your midterm so that it comes out to be exactly 20 points. It can be whatever number of points you need it to be, and it can
Keith,
be.
I'm going to interrupt. Sorry.
Yep.
I think we're coming to the end of our
Oh, we are
time.
coming to the end.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Sorry. Maybe just if you have a couple of words to kind of sum up. You've given us a great overview of the.
Yeah,
gradebook.
let me just show you one thing here under View. If I wanted to go in and add scores for the students that are in here on the midterm, I can come over here to Single View. In terms of entering grades, Marie, do we have students in here yet?
I did enroll a bunch.
Oh yeah, I haven't selected the grade. So I'm going to go here and select midterm. In terms of entering grades manually, this is the best piece of advice I can provide. Don't go into the grader report to do that. Come here to the single view, select the item, and then you can just go through. Here are the individuals you've got. You can just enter their scores and hit save. So yeah, just in general, think about how you can reflect your grading schema and what's set up in the gradebook. Let Moodle do the work for you. Let Moodle provide you flexibility by setting up categories, assigning them weights, and then that gives you the freedom to do whatever you want in that category. So sorry for not noticing the time. There were some other things we could talk about in the gradebook, but again, I'm sure, as Marie has specified, if you have questions, email us at tltc@purchase.edu. We'll get back to you. And often, as usual, as I'm babbling along, Marie has been putting useful links into the chat. Okay.
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, thank you so much, Keith. And I know you've got another meeting to go to, as you said, too. But maybe we'll stick around for just a moment or so longer for any questions. But Keith, if you don't have time.
Actually, my next meeting is at 3, so I can hang
Okay.
around for a little bit
Okay,
as well.
great.
But I will. I'll get out of share screen mode, so that keeps me from babbling on. And if there are questions or comments, we'll be happy to talk about them.
So we have so many people at different levels of Moodle use that I know it's going to be overwhelming for some people what we've been through. From other people, probably they haven't gotten to specific